Hey, this is Aaron from Film and 5D with a quick tutorial for you guys with the new Sony a7s. I've kind of been taking the last few days to look through all the settings that this camera has to offer, and it has a lot of settings. There's a lot to do with this menu. I'm going to try to keep this video under 20 minutes, or at least under 30 minutes, hopefully under 20, but there's a lot to go through. I just want to give you guys just a quick general overview, and then I'm going to be doing a full review in probably 2 to 3 weeks after I've used the camera a bit more, and I'm going to shoot a short film on it so I have a pretty good grip of it. I'll be doing a review, but for right now, just a quick tutorial for you guys who are getting this camera and want to set it up. If you're happening on the channel for the first time, this is the first time you're seeing one of my videos, this is going to be great for you to set up your camera and just to have a general idea of where all the buttons are and everything else. But let's begin. Let's start with the picture settings for photography. Image size, 12 megapixels, just leave it at large. I mean, it's only 12, that's already small enough as is. Aspect ratio, 3:2 is pretty standard, 6:4, if you're printing. But this is a really cool feature actually. This is something my 5D Mark II didn't have. If you want to shoot 16:9, which is video framing, and you want to take pictures in that framing, it's going to be really awesome for you. You can basically turn that on, and then now you got the crop up and top and bottom. You're going to get less, smaller. It's going to use like a smaller portion of the actual frame. You're not going to be using the entire full frame, but it's still pretty nice, especially since it's going to sync up very nicely with your on production shoots, basically. And then next we have quality, RAW and JPEG. It's pretty standard. You want to leave it on that. You want to at least have RAW, and then if you want the JPEG option, which I definitely do for uploading straight off camera to the internet, basically. And file format, XAVC-S is actually the new format that Sony has come out with their cameras. It's an upgrade to the AVC HD, which is a couple years old now. And basically, AVC HD was good, but it wasn't very good at color grading. So supposedly the XAVC-S is a little bit better at color grading. That's what at least we're hoping for. So, and then you have your MP4, which is pretty standard as well, but I would definitely use the XAVC-S. And then for the record setting, these are all at 50 megabytes a second. That's the cap, the limit on it, which is perfect for the internet. And there's no reason to have more than that. You have your 24, your 30, your 60, and your 120. Now the 60 is actually full HD, which is one of the better features of this camera. A lot of the newer cameras coming out are having this, but the 5D Mark III doesn't have this, and so you get that nice, basically 2 to 3 times slow motion, depending on what you're shooting at 24 or 30, at full HD, which is just awesome. And then if you want to crop down to 720, you can have 5 times slow motion at 120p. That's some very nice features you got there, but 24 is pretty standard for if you're making films. And then this dual video recording feature is actually pretty cool. If you turn it on, basically what it will do is it will record your XAVC-S file and an MP4 file. And the MP4 file will be much smaller. They'll be recorded at the same time. They'll be the exact same files, but the MP4 will be separate. Sorry, it'll be the exact same files. It'll be the exact same videos, and then you'll have an MP4 version, XAVC-S version. So that's really cool if you want to upload a quick little snippet to the internet and you don't want to have to go in and edit it and make it smaller. It already comes small, and so that's a good feature to have. I'm going to leave it off though for now. Drive mode, this is pretty standard. You got your single, you got your continuous, you got your timers for if you're taking group photos and you want to be in the image as well. These are all customizable as well. You can, to an extent. And here's something I want to show you. So this is called bracketing. The 5D Mark III has this, but for those of you who are coming from the Mark II, you might not know about this. So this is basically high dynamic range, HDR, and what it does is let me go ahead and select that. It'll take 3 images at different ISOs to expose it properly. So let me go ahead and do that. So it just took 3 images. I guess you gotta hold the button down or else it'll only take 2. So it takes 3 images, and let's just look through them real quick. You can see here's just what you were exposed at, and then here's the darker one, so you can get a better idea of what the highlights look like, get more information there. Then you got the shadows, where it brings up the shadows, and basically you combine all 3 of these images into one image. And this is particularly good for something like landscape photography where you're taking a portrait of somebody and they're in front of a landscape, and it's nice and bright, but you want to expose them and the landscape separately so that they both look good. And so that's a great feature to have, using that bracket. I'm going to turn that back to single shooting for now. And then you have flash mode and red eye reduction. You're going to want to leave red eye reduction off. Just do that in post if you absolutely need to. It shouldn't really be an issue anymore. And then focus modes. I always shot with my 5D in manual focus. The autofocus was not very good. It was very finicky. It didn't always focus on what I wanted to. I've been using this. And by the way, here's the continuous autofocus right below the single shot. So this one's going to be for photography, and then this one's more for video, where you get the nice smooth autofocus, where it doesn't kind of glitch and go real fast. It just does it nice and smooth. Now it's not going to be as good as manual, but if you're tired of doing manual and you want to try out the autofocus, that's going to be a good option for you. But for the single shot, this thing is wicked fast, and you can combine the best of both worlds. If you want to use manual focus, all you do is you hold down this little button right here, and then there's your focus peaking right there, as you can see, and you can focus it. I'm just going to go ahead and put it all the way out of focus. You can take a picture. Now, at any time, if you let go of this button, autofocus is back on. Bam. And it's like instantly like that. I mean, that was just to show you again. We're completely out of focus. In under a second, it's focusing and taking a picture, and it's getting it accurate every time. These mirrorless cameras are very, very amazing. I'm quite impressed on the photo side of that for sure. In focus area, you can change this. Most cameras have this. I have mine set to zone. Basically, it just kind of gives you, and you can kind of adjust it based on like what third you want it to be on. But it basically just gives an overall quicker response, I think. And then there's other ones, like another popular one would be the flexible one, where you can move this around. You can have it up here. Maybe you're taking a lot of pictures on the right third, just leave it right there and have it set there. And then there's the center, which a lot of people will use this as well, where it's just right in the middle, right in this box right here. You can't really see it because it's gray, but it'll just focus exactly where you're aiming the camera at, basically. Focus settings, same thing I just showed you, just a little bit different menu. AF Illuminator. So I can't really demonstrate this right now. I would just leave it on auto. Only turn it off if you're taking pictures of people at night. And basically what it is a little orange flashlight, little mini flash that basically helps the camera autofocus. It's for autofocus. It helps you autofocus in the dark. Now, if you aim it at someone's eye, it's going to kind of blind them a little bit, just like a flash would. It can be a little bit annoying, but I haven't gotten too many complaints so far, so I wouldn't worry about it. It's definitely a great feature, because it's very hard, even with an EVF, to manually focus in the dark. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to take photos in the dark using manual focus. It's very hard to make sure you're locking that focus in. You'd rather rely on the camera to do that, honestly. So that's what that is. Exposure steps is pretty standard. You set into 0.3 or 0.5. This controls up here. If you're doing it manually or electronically or whatever. And ISO, pretty standard. You can adjust that without going in the menu, which is what I would recommend, honestly, with this little wheel right here. That's what I have it set to, but you can set it to whatever you want, and I'll show you that later. Metering mode, this is for what I was talking about for the exposure comp. I would just leave this at center. It's really a preference thing. I've always liked either spot or center. I think center gives me a more accurate representation, but honestly, I just rely on my eyes to do that kind of stuff anyways. For white balance, it has pretty basic white balance. It has quite a few, actually. The one cool thing I really like is it has 3 custom white balances that you can set either in Kelvin, or you can use a 70% gray card, or 18% gray. I don't even remember anymore. It's been so long. But I like to use the Kelvins. I have it set to 3K right now, as you can see. And then you're going to want to leave the auto HDR on. And then creative style, this is going to be, a lot of people use neutral because it kind of doesn't really bake in anything to the image. No contrast, no saturation, no sharpness. Sharpness is one of those things you do not want the camera to ever do. You want to use Photoshop or Premiere or whatever to control your sharpness. But there's other creative styles too. If you want to just take JPEG straight off the camera and you don't want to have to do any editing from the portrait, and these are all editable as well. So I'm gonna leave that on neutral for right now. And then picture effect is basically black and white and the more dramatic creative styles. For some reason it's grayed out, so I can't show it to you, but if you want black and white or something like that, you go to there. Picture profile. Now this is what we get interesting for the video stuff. So picture profiles are going to be like your creative style, your Technicolor, basically the styles that are going to give you the most dynamic range. Now it comes off, but you can switch it to PP7, which that's going to be your S-Log2. That's going to be the one that you guys are hearing about. I'll just go here to show you. Your gamma is going to be S-Log2, and these are all adjustable. There's a bunch of settings in here. You can even take down, bump up the saturation a little bit, and you can adjust the color depth. I mean, it gets really crazy, and you can really fine tune it. But I think the preset S-Log2 is pretty standard. There's other ones like Cine 2, and there's Cine 1 right here, and there's all these different ones, and you can adjust any of these yourself. They come standard. Like I have my own S-Log2 here that I personally like a little bit better that I've been using, but I'm going to actually just leave it on S-Log for right now to demonstrate some of this stuff. So zoom and focus magnifier, these are basically out of settings. So if you are in manual focus, which let me go to manual focus, and you hit C1, you can choose what you want to focus on. Oops, what did I do there? Okay. So let's say I want to focus on that PlayStation controller. I'll hit C1 again, and I can focus it, and I can adjust it here as well. And basically, once I've locked my focus, I can either take a picture straight from there, or I can hit C1 again and go out. Either way, it's a little bit, and you can do that in video as well. So that's one of those options. So if I'm sitting here recording, I can zoom in while recording. I'm still recording, and just make sure that whatever I'm looking at is in focus, and I can kind of go around. I can see, okay, there's my focus peaking, and it's just so awesome that they added that feature. And then it resets if you leave it for 2 seconds on my camera. So let's go back into here. Okay, long exposure noise reduction. So this comes on. You're gonna, at least I believe it does, you're gonna want to turn it off. I did a time lapse last night, which I'll show you on the screen right now. And basically I was taking 10-second exposures and in 30-second intervals, and what it would do is it would actually try to remove the noise from the 10-second exposure in between the shots, and it got so bogged down that the pictures overlapped, and eventually the program I was using, the time-lapse program I was using, just stopped. And so that's something that you don't want to have done, is leave that off. Just do that in post. That's something you can do in post, and it'll do a better job than the camera does. But for the high ISO noise reduction, just leave that on normal. I mean, it can handle that just fine. Let's move on to face detection. This is actually a really cool feature. You have this on, there's different settings too, and you can actually register faces, which I'll show you later. It's in one of the other settings. So if you're doing a wedding or something and you want to register the bride's face, or you're at a kid's birthday party and you want to register the kid who's having the birthday's face, it'll always focus on them if they're in the frame, which is, it's not something I've tested yet, but it definitely looks cool, and I'm very excited about that. But the smile face detection works awesome. Basically, when you're in, let me go to autofocus. When you're in autofocus, it'll basically show this little green over, where there's two eyes and a smile, basically. It'll do its best to find faces and keep those in focus. It's really great for birthday parties. Soft skin effect, just leave that off. That's another one of those things you don't want the camera to do. Do that in post if you have to. Let's move on here. Steady shot, this is marked off right now because this is a prime. This is the 35 Zeiss prime. If you are using an OSS lens like the 24 to 70 kit lens, I think has OSS, and the other one as well, the more expensive one. So those ones, you're obviously going to want to have that on. That's going to help you keep handheld footage usable. So that's that. Color space. So I have this set to sRGB right now. Ideally, this is for pictures only, and when you're taking pictures, you want it to be in Adobe RGB. And the reason being, it's going to be easier to grade the raw photos that way, and using programs like Camera Raw, for instance. sRGB is great for the internet. A lot of programs. So basically, sRGB, if you're taking JPEGs and you're uploading straight to the internet, is what you want to use. If you're not doing that and you only want to edit your photos, you're doing a wedding, you're going to edit all your photos that you're taking, you're going to use Adobe RGB, and you're going to take it into the program, you're going to edit it, and then you're going to export as a JPEG in sRGB, if that makes sense. So basically, it just gives you more room and to work with the color and the saturation and stuff like that, and all that fun stuff. Auto slow shutter, just leave that off. Audio recording, if you want audio, leave it on. When noise reduction, that can be off. Turn it on. I haven't actually tried it, so I wouldn't recommend it, but who knows. Zebras. So this is a cool feature. So I'm actually going to turn on zebras right now. And so you have different sensitivities all the way up to 100. So let me actually I'm going to set it to 90, and I'm going to overexpose this image. So you can see right here, it's for sure going pure white. That's what the zebras are telling you. What's pure white right now? So that little piece of paper right there is going to pure white. Everything else is definitely overexposed, but it's not. We're in S-Log 2, so it's not completely gone. That information's still there. You can still bring it back in post if you need to. But this information is gone. That's what the zebras are. Now, if you adjust the sensitivity and lower it, it's basically adjusting the tolerance. So at 70, you can see a lot. It's like definitely being very close to overexposed. Not pure white, but definitely being close. So I like to leave mine at 90 because I don't want all that craziness on the screen. I just want to see what's pure white, what is for sure overexposed, what for sure can I not get back in post. And 100 would be the exact threshold. So I basically don't want to get anywhere close to pure white. So that's basically a pure preference. I'm going to actually turn that back off. But that's an awesome feature. Having zebras, absolutely awesome. Great for video. Manual focus assist. Let's go ahead and turn this on. I'll show you what that is. So when you're in manual focus, for some reason, my display got, okay, there we go. So when you're in manual focus, let me go ahead and expose this again. When you're in manual focus, and as soon as you start focusing, it'll zoom in. You don't have to hit that C1 button or anything. It'll automatically start zooming in. You can move it around, make sure, and then you could just, once it's in focus, bam, just take your picture. So that's what that is. So if you're using manual focus a lot for video, for photos specifically, that's going to be a great thing to have on. I have it off because obviously I don't need it since I'm using auto right now, but that's a great feature to have. And then that magnification time limit, like I talked before, right now I have it set to 2 seconds and then it resets. If you don't want it to reset, you can set it to no limit, and then basically you just have to hit the button to reset it. All right, we're at about 20 minutes right now, so I'm going to try to wrap this up as quickly as I can, even though I'm only about halfway there. So grid line, rule of thirds, we've talked about that on the show. It's pretty standard. There's other ones here too, but I definitely recommend having rule of thirds, and you're going to get these nice grid lines to give you your thirds for bam, bam, and then your top third, and that's just a great feature to have. Most cameras have that. My 5D had that as well. So marker display. Now this is something my 5D did not have. So you're going to have this on if you're using it for video. It has all these different aspect ratios, like the more common ones. I'm sure you'll be able to input more later. Maybe there already is a way to do that, or maybe it'll come in a firmware. But basically, you have your 16:9, but if you want to shoot 2.35, you can turn that on, and then basically once you start recording, it'll give you borders, these white lines. So these black lines are your 16:9. The white lines is the 2.35. So everything within those frames will be what your final image is going to look like once you crop it. It'll still come in 16:9, but at least you'll know that it's cropped, and you have the room to move the frame up and down. I've talked about this before in previous episodes, but that's just an awesome feature to have. It's basically a little magic lantern without actually hacking your camera, which is sweet. Audio level display, if you're doing audio stream on the camera, you can actually monitor and make sure you're not peaking, going into the red zone basically. Auto review, this is for when you're reviewing pictures, it's set to 2 seconds. You can set it up to 10 seconds or have it off completely. Display button. Now this gets a little bit intense, so we're going to look at the monitor first. So all these things that are checked are things that once I hit the display button, which is the up arrow, it'll cycle through all these. So right now I have display all info checked, so that my basic settings, all the settings I'm currently using basically that it'll show. No display info, which will not show anything, so I can see a nice clean image of what I'm about to film. A histogram, so you can see how properly exposed you are based on the light sensors. And you have a level too. This one I have set up in the viewfinder, so if I want to see if my camera's level, I can see it in there, or I can see this whole setup. That basically, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it shows the leveling there as well, which that leveling feature is awesome, and I love it. But I'll be talking about that in the review and stuff. So that's that, and you can basically do the same thing in the viewfinder as well. Same basic settings, and basically as you go cycle through the display, like I said, there's the histogram, there's everything on the screen, and here's everything on the screen with the image, and then here's the clean. So you have those, and you kind of just cycle through those. So that's really cool. Peaking level. So this is your focus peaking. This is a new feature for a lot of these DSLRs that are coming out. The GH4 has it, and the A7s has it. And it's really, for $3,000 and less cameras, I think it's really awesome that they've included this. I have mine set to mid. If you turn it on, it usually comes as high. But mid, I think, works pretty well. If you turn it on high, I'll just kind of show you real quick. You'll see all these red lines start showing up, and so that shows you what's in focus. And it can get a little bit cluttered, so I think mid works pretty well in my recommendation. Definitely at least mid, high if you can't really see it. Now you're going to want to make it red or yellow. Do not use white. I used white for the first couple of days because that's how it came set up. And it's very hard to tell if things are being overexposed, especially when you mix it in with the zebras and everything else. The white is just not going to work. So I would recommend red, but yellow is just a preference thing. Exposure set guide, have that set to on. Live view display. Now this is basically, so you have your EVF and you have your LCD. These are both showing you images of what the final image is going to look like. Whereas on a DSLR, you're looking through a mirror, so you're seeing what your eye sees versus seeing what the final image looks like. Now, if you want to turn it back to that, to technically what your eye sees without a mirror, basically with the same light levels and color temperature and everything, you're going to want to turn this off if you're in a studio shoot or something like that. But I would recommend just leaving it on. That's the reason we got these mirrorless, right? I mean, I think most of us like the mirrorless because no matter if we're looking through the LCD or the viewfinder, we see exactly what we're taking an image of, the exposures and everything. So it's a preference thing. If you're used to the optical viewfinder, this might be better for you to have off. All these you can leave the same. Finder monitor. So basically when your eye goes up to this, the LCD turns off, and etc. So when you move your eye away, it switches back on. So it's switching between the two. If you don't want that to happen and you never use your EVF, you only use your LCD, you're going to want to make sure that this is on monitor. So that way it doesn't switch between the two. I personally love the viewfinder. I'm really digging it. I like to use both. I wish it was a little less sensitive, but at the same time, maybe they'll come out with a firmware to fix that. Release without lens, you're going to have this enabled basically if you're using other lenses that are not connected digitally or electronically, I mean. You want to be able to still have the camera on and still be able to use the shutter button without using the correct lens, the Sony lens or whatever, if you're using an adapter with no electronics. So just have that enabled. There's really no reason not to. The only reason not to, I guess, would be to protect the sensor from the sun. If you're aiming it directly at the sun without a lens, it's pretty bad. AF with shutter, leave that on. Auto. Now silent shooting. Now this is a cool feature. So let me go ahead and turn this on real quick. I'm actually going to also, I have manual focus on right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a picture and see what you guys think. That was it. I'll take another one. Literally no sound. It uses an electronic shutter, which is great for situations where you're not shaking the camera too much, you're not moving around too much, your subject isn't moving too much. If they are moving, you're going to want to use regular mode because then you're using the actual physical shutter versus an electronic digital shutter that can have some motion blur and random blurriness and rolling shutter and stuff like that. Stuff that you want to avoid basically. But it's an awesome feature, and the only unfortunate thing is that I've been using autofocus a lot, and unfortunately it still makes that beep noise. So if I'm taking an image, it still makes that beep noise. You cannot turn that off. To my knowledge, I don't know how to turn that off. I wish there was a way. If anybody knows, please leave a comment below. I'm really struggling to figure out how to turn that off because absolutely deadly silence would be very, very sick. And then of course, for some reason this all sets up again. Back to where we were. So I'm going to go ahead and turn silent shooting back off. So this is something that's obviously related to the actual shutter. Most people say to leave it on, so just leave that on. It sounds a little bit better. It's actually, it produces a better image, basically. I mean, especially when you're moving the camera. This is all stuff that you can leave the same. Bracket order. This is basically when I was talking about the HDR, what order it's going to take it in. So it's going to start with your regularly exposed image, and then it's going to go down to the shadows, and then it's going to go up to the highlights. Or you can have it do shadows, regular, highlights. That's a preference thing. I would honestly recommend just leaving it as is. It's going to be the best. It's going to take the image you exposed first, and that's what's really important. Okay, face registration. So this is what I was talking about before. If you're at a wedding, you want to focus on the bride for the majority of the day, you can register her face, and you can it'll actually focus on her whenever it sees her in the frame. And that's just another way to really smooth out your workflow and make sure you're getting all the properly focused images, and that can be very, very crucial. Now here's a cool feature. So this camera is a full frame, but it can also accept APS-C lenses if you wish. Right now I have it set to off. You can have it on auto, so it'll auto detect whether or not it's APS-C or full frame. And then basically what it does, it kind of like digitally crops. It uses only a portion of the center. But what you can do also is if you only have, so right now I only have a 55 and a 35 millimeter lens. If I wanted to crop into 85, rather than doing that digitally and losing resolution, I can actually turn this on, and then it's cropped in. It's using a smaller portion of the sensor, so the image quality lacks just a tiny bit, but you're not losing any resolution. You're still getting the full resolution, and that's absolutely awesome. It just extends your lens if you really want to, and then we're back to wide again. And then this is to adjust for if you have an off-brand lens that you're using and the autofocus isn't working, you can kind of adjust that and fine-tune that there. All these, okay, everything else. Okay, so here is our function menu set. And these can all be adjusted to whatever you want. Pretty much all the settings, all the quick settings that you would want to adjust, you can adjust here. And basically, you hit this function button, and it comes up with 12 quick settings. Like I have my drive on here, I have my picture profile, so that I don't have to go in the menu to switch that every time. So I've customized mine to what I use most. I'm still kind of working on it. I have zebras right here as well. So that's something, this is a quick way. That way you don't have to go all the way into the menu. You can still see your image and see what's going on. And related to that is custom key settings. So to my knowledge, every button on this camera, with the exception of the menu button and the view images button, can be adjusted to whatever you want. Oh, and the shutter button as well. I don't think that can be changed. I don't know why you'd want to change that either. Anyways, so you can change all these to the different settings. So for instance, if I hit the down arrow, it comes up with my focus mode. It did not come like that. When it comes with white balance, display, and drive mode, and nothing down here. So I actually set that to be my own. And you can also change, so this middle button is now my zebras, and I actually changed that. Zebras were not, there was no shortcut for zebras. And so now I can quickly turn zebras on and off, if they're distracting me from my image too much, and I can turn them off, or I can turn them back on very quickly. For instance, picture profile. Bam, I'm in it. I can turn it off if I want to see what it will look like at the end, and I can go back to my S-Log2, get a better idea of what things are going to look like without going into my menu and turning off picture profile. So there's quick ways, and you can pretty much every button can be changed into anything you want, with the exception, from what I've seen, I'm sure there's a few more, but I really wish that I could change one of the buttons to be the silent shoot mode button, instead of going all the way into the menu and finding silent shooting and turning it on. It'd be really awesome if I could just do that with a shortcut, and unfortunately it is not one of the options. If you look in here, it is not one of the options, and that's unfortunate. So there's that, and you can adjust those to whatever you want. Dial setup is the same thing. You basically have two options. You can have the shutter in the front and the f-stop in the back, or you can have them switched. They come switched. I believe they come like this with the shutter in the back and the f-stop in the front, but I felt this is basically a preference. I'm coming from the 5D Mark II, shutters in the front. That's what I'm used to. Apertures in the back, so f-stops in the back. That's what I'm used to. So it's basically whatever you're used to. You can set it up however you want. Leave this off if you're using that for shutter and aperture. And then I think that's everything. I'll quickly show you guys kind of the Wi-Fi menu, and this is basically where if you want to quickly send an image to your smartphone, this is where you do it. This is where you set up your phone and everything else. And then here's your applications. For instance, I bought the time-lapse application for $10, and it comes with this Play Memories camera apps, and that's what you use to transfer the images to your phone. And it's free on your phone. You just download the Play Memories camera app on your phone, on your iPhone or Android device, and it will work very, very, very quickly. It's basically like uploading straight from your phone. And then you have your other basic things like monitor brightness. This is actually, you want to set this to sunny weather for sure. And then you have your viewfinder, which you actually have to look into this to see the settings for, so I won't do that right now. That's also if you want to make that as bright as possible, to be honest. And yeah, and there's some power saving settings in here that you can kind of look through. Display quality, definitely have that on high for sure. There's time code, there's HDMI for when we get our HDMI recorders and we can actually record 4K. So I'll be getting into that and showing you guys those settings. And then you can format the card, and you can set how the layout of where your files save and everything else. That's basically it. I was basically wanted to show you guys the basic settings that I've been using, and I've been using the word basic a lot for some reason, so there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and end this video here, and I'll see you guys next time.